Good morning. Good morning. See, everybody's moving around in the chairs. I'm like, ooh. Giving honor to God, who's the head of my life, to this great church, pastor, to the great man of God, and great teacher and preacher, to the leadership here, to the family of faith here at Wooster, UMC, to our visitors and friends, and even to our enemies. We may have some in here with us, trying to learn our secrets of warfare. Grace and peace be unto you, O God our Father, and the Lord Jesus the Christ. It is good to be here, truly good to be here. As I stand before you, I think about Elizabeth Taylor when she said, I believe, to her seventh husband, I got you now, but fret not, I won't keep you long. And I say that as you know, if you looked in the bulletin, it gives a little background about me, my pedigree, a Baptist preacher. So you know we could be here till 3 p.m. just getting to the first song of praise. Nevertheless, I will do as God has called me to do. Bring you greetings from Ohio Guidestone, formerly Berea Children's Home and Family Services, where Mr. Richard Franks is our president and CEO. Ms. Donna Keegan is our COO. Mr. Alex Petrus is our Vice President of Advancement and Fundraising. Mr. Ben Carney, or Dr. Ben Carney, is our Chief Clinical Officer. And I also bring you greetings from Michael Samuel, our son, who runs our house, and my lovely wife, Delita. Unfortunately, they're not able to be here today. Michael has a prior commitment that takes him away from us this morning. The Beatitudes. It was shared with me earlier by Sisters Linda Smith and Sisters Jean Bruger and Sister, in her absence, Elizabeth Feldman, that we were talking about the Beatitudes a little bit this morning. And so here I will share again, the Beatitudes. Blessed are the compelled. You're thinking, what are you talking about compelled, preacher? What do you mean by that? Well, you know, the definition of compelled is to be moved, to be pushed, to be urged. Something happens that compels you to do something. It could be the smell of a good food that compels you to want to eat. It could be the advertisement of a movie that compels you to want to go and see that movie. For me, it could be a nice pair of shoes that compels me to go over and above my allowance. But those things that compel you drive you to do things. I have the New Life Translation. I want to read it to you and let you listen to the wording. It's a little different, but it does not water down God's word. I found that my young people, my future leaders, enjoy this translation. Those who know there is nothing good in themselves are happy, because the holy nation of heaven is theirs. Those who have sorrow are happy, because they will be comforted. Those who have no pride in their hearts are happy, because the earth will be given to them. Those who are hungry and thirsty to be right with God are happy, because they will be filled. Those who show loving kindness are happy, because they will have loving kindness shown to them. Those who have a pure heart are happy, because they will see God. Those who make peace are happy, because they will be called the sons of God. Those who have it very hard for doing right are happy, because the holy nation of heaven is theirs. You are happy when people talk in a bad way to you and make it very hard for you and tell bad things and lies about you, because you trust in Jesus. Happy. You're thinking I'm advertising for the recoming of the movie Happy Feet. Happy. But what is happy? What is to be so happy to be persecuted? What is to be happy about when somebody lies about you or lies on you? What is so happy about having mental anguish and going through trials and tribulations? What is so happy not having pride in oneself? Well, beloved, we believe that God fulfilled his promise in the person of Christ, who brought together all nations who are to belong to God, and he forms them in a new Israel through a new covenant, which was himself on the cross. The Beatitudes are the confirming of a new spirit. See, Jesus, like Moses, had the 10 Commandments written on tablets of stone. These conditions and points was of man's heart. The Beatitudes. Grace changed and elevated them. Moses' law was on the exterior of man, but the Beatitudes is a law on the interior of man. The interior, the heart. Blessed be. Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, pointed out that the genuine happiness is complete and sufficient unto oneself. Not everyone would obtain it because this happiness was natural, resulting of emotional stability brought on by the virtues of joy of natural contemplation of the highest of things. But Christ is God in the flesh, and God became man so that man could be elevated by the divine sharing in the supernatural life of God. It is by entering into the person of Christ that we enter into his joy. Each beatitude begins with blessed are, meaning blessedness that is sufficient unto itself, complete, and the first sampling of life eternal. These attitudes describe the spirit of the one who lives in the person of Christ. You see, blessed are the poor in spirit, the kingdom of heaven is theirs. The first and most fundamental condition in belonging to Christ is also the first condition for entering into the joy of the kingdom of God. You see, when one lacks in material wealth, they know it. See, right now I am broke, and I know it. I have a Halls, I have some lint in my pocket, and some hope that I might find some coins in the ashtray of my car, so when I head to Wendy's, I can get me a 99-cent burger. You know when you're broke. You know when you're broke. You have a lot of hope and maybe no help in the wealth aspect of things. So those that are lacking in spirit are aware of their spiritual deficit as well. The other need for God, thus they open themselves to him. That simple act of opening oneself gives you the gift of the kingdom of heaven, opening yourself. See, God doesn't beat you down. He doesn't kick in your door. He knocks and asks you to open and allow him to come in. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. This attitude refers to a special kind of mourning. See, if we love God, we will love all those who belong to God, all those, female, tall, short, wide, not so wide, those who like candy, those who don't, those who are vegans, those who are not, those who wear blue suits, those who don't, those who wear long skirts or short skirts, those who don't smell so good, those who do not have education, haven't had the luxury of going to historical colleges, those that are just sanitation engineers, those are just bus drivers, those that are doctors, whosoever. We shall have love for those. And every human being, without exception, comes from God and is loved by God with incomprehensive love. So more when we enter into the heart of God, the more we discover our neighbor is there. See, when we think beyond ourselves, when inside ourselves, we look at the least of thee, the lost, the left, and the alone. When we look at our neighbor, we should see ourselves. And so we are moved, we are compelled to come down off of our spiritual high. You know, I found God and now I'm baptized, I'm confirmed, I'm riding on the spiritual high. Oh, don't bother me now, I'm riding on my spiritual high. You know, don't touch me, I'm feeling good right now. Also, we need to get off our rested assurance. Some of you may have heard that song, Rested Assurance, Jesus is Mine. Well, I'm sitting on my rested assurance. Well, there's a man across the street that is hungry. There are children that are latchkey. Well, I'm resting on my assurance here that I'm good in Jesus' mind. And so we get off of that high. We get up off of our duffs, and we go looking for him or her. Because when we do, we will find the Father we have loved. Remember, Jesus said, what you do to the least of these, you do also unto me. Remember, they asked him, well, when did we see that you were naked? When did we see you were hungry? When did we see you were locked up and locked out? When you saw the least of these, you saw me. You see, we'll find the Father that we've begun to love when we look at our neighbor. We discover our neighbor in God, and we rediscover God in our neighbor if we're willing to look outside ourselves. See, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. See, a spirit that is meek is a spirit that is gentle. I didn't say weak, I just said gentle. Man that is poor in spirit, who mourn the misery of others because they really understand that misery and are moved to share in it at a gentle towardness who suffer. See, I have an understanding when I see someone who hasn't had a meal, because I remember when I didn't have a meal. I remember the days in undergrad. All we had on the weekends, young ladies, was grape Kool-Aid, Spam ham, and mac and cheese. Perfect recipe for hypertension. I remember a time that all I had was a bag of potatoes. Because, see, I got smart and I said I didn't need the weekend meal plan. So I had baked potatoes, I had boiled potatoes, I had raw potatoes. I was a walking Mr. Potato Head. I'd have potatoes. And so I understand when you don't have anything. I understand when you look in your refrigerator and the only thing that greets you is the light. And that's all it is. I understand when you look in your closet and you have that same suit that you try to clean it and press it to the point that and they say, man, that's a nice shark skin suit. That's not shark skin. That's starched in, ironed in body oil. But that's all you have. So I understand, and we understand. We understand those who are wrestling with their spirituality because we were there at one time. So the meek have that empathy, understanding for those that are wrestling in misery and struggling, because we also remember our struggle. Oh, we can't get too high and forget from whence we've come. Because if we are, then we have to question our faith and our focus. Where is our focus? Is it on the cross? Or is it like Michael Jackson says, the man or the woman in the mirror? And we're looking at how good we look and how nice we smell and how well we dress up. We that are meek are not quick to take offense at others. We're very patient, for we know that God has always been patient with us. I remember when I was wrestling with my salvation, and at that time a young seminarian in undergrad at Ashland College, then it was a college, so I'm dating myself, stood with me. Every day we would get together and he would just pound me about thinking inwardly. You know you're going to hell. I said, okay, and I'll take 2 bags of chips and take me back to the dorm. I'm good. But he continued to stay with me. And God used him as a vessel to bring me to the awakening of myself. Though I was a star athlete, and then I had a full head of hair, I didn't have this moon roof, and I was dressing good and good physique, but heading to hell. As my dad used to say, about to bust the bottom of it wide open. But then one day the light came on. Years later, I approached him and I said, why did you stay with me? Why did you lock onto me with the tenacity of a bulldog? He said, because each time you said no, I saw myself saying the same thing. And thanks be to God that somebody stuck to me with the tenacity of a bulldog, for I may not be here right now. And so that's what we take when we look outside ourselves. We remember where we were. And there's somebody that you'll see that looks like you and will remind you of you back then. And so you have that hope for them. You don't give up on them because somebody didn't give up on you. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for what is right. They shall be satisfied. There is a tremendous amount of indifference in this world, if you didn't know it. and in America. And the reason it is that indifference is quite painless. It doesn't hurt to be indifferent. It doesn't really cost you anything. You see them do not suffer over the wounds of others. See, all they think about is themselves. They want to know, do you want to know a secret? Do you really want to know? I got a secret for y'all. Many secretly delight in the misery of others. Oh, did you hear about Jenny? She got kicked out of college for plagiarizing. That's a shame. Glad she's gone. I never really liked her. She wouldn't let me borrow her socks. You hear about the Johnsons? Their house is being foreclosed. Shame. There were some nasty neighbors. Kids were too loud. The dog was always barking. I'm glad they lost their house. You hear about John, after 35 years at the mill, lost his job. He was a terrible foreman, always cracking the whip. Glad he's gone. There are people that have indifferences with us that really relish in one's misery. That's the truth. Now, have you ever noticed how bad news travels faster than good news? Because they feed on that. You know, I tell my young people that a good reputation takes you years to build up. And a bad reputation can come in a second. And also could come off of a lie that travels fast like bad news. They're just simply not incensed at the injustices around them. They don't see it. They don't feel it. They're sitting well. Their refrigerator's full. Their lights are on. Their house is cool when it needs to be cool and it's warm when it needs to be warm. They don't see the need. I remember when I was in Washington, D.C., young people, and all of us are young people, during the Reagan administration. And it was saying that there was no poverty in America. Do you remember that? No poverty in America. Everybody was sitting with. And right across the street from the White House was a park. And we called it Bum Park because there were people wearing 3 or 4 or 5 sets of clothes. Can you picture a man wearing 4 pairs of Carhartt bibs in 70-degree weather? And they had a sign, I'm hungry, feed me. And yet, there's no poverty in America. Indifference. Painless, doesn't cost you anything. Don't see the need of others. And they could be staring you right in the face. Individuals, not here, but I've seen individuals come into the church, in the church, needing love, needing direction, needing that help because they looked at the church as being that guiding light in a dark day. And yet I've seen us, not here, but us as saints, push them away because they don't smell that good. Oh, did you see what she had on? Her skirt was way up to here, and she's coming to the church. Aren't we supposed to be here to bring healing, to bring love and understanding? We can teach to dress a better way. We can teach our young ladies to be young ladies, but we can't teach them if we're rebuking them and pushing them away. We can't teach our young men to stand up and pull their pants up if we're too busy beating them down and pushing them away. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for what is right. The true litmus test that the Lord is drawing ourselves onto himself, into his own life, is that we are the kind of people that loves justice more than we love ourselves, as opposed to those of people who look out of themselves first and only later after their comfort zone and their needs, their hierarchy needs have been met. Then, and maybe then, they may look outside themselves. Those who have entrusted into Christ will suffer a great deal of hunger and thirst due to the truth that there's so much injustice around us, more intense love, more intense hunger and thirst. Blessed are we if we live with that kind of hunger and thirst, for it means we have entered into the hunger and thirst of Christ. Remember, we were talking in the Lenten season, and we were talking about Jesus' 7 utterances on the cross, and one of them is, I thirst. Well, he was thirsting for the love of his Father, yes, but he was also thirsting for his Father's love for mankind. You remember that if you look in the Bible, my young people, you know that the Bible is a big book, a good book, made up of a series of books. I think it's in 2 divisions. I think it's the Old Testament and the New Testament, and I believe in the Old Testament it's 39 books and 27 in the New. Well, in those 39 books, most of those books talk about God's hunger for the reconnection with his creation. So he was hungry. But if you look at the ministry and the life of Jesus, you know, Jesus was only 33 years old. His ministry was only 3 years. So he had a thirst for the reconnection of God's creation back to God. See, when you're thirsty, you do things expeditiously. Even to the point, and I watch the animal kingdom. I get into these animal stories. You ever notice that two mortal enemies will come to a drinking pond to drink because they're thirsty? Now, they're looking at each other, but they're still thirsty. You see the lions looking at the pond. You see the crocodiles moving around. You see the impalas there, too. Now, you know the impala and the lion, that's not a good mix because somebody's going to be a snack for somebody. But when you're thirsty, you set aside your indifferences for that moment to quench that thirst. You do things expeditiously. I like to eat. I think y'all can see that. I like to eat. And if I have a taste for some ribs, but if I can't get those, I might settle for a Wendy's burger. But if I'm thirsty for water, nothing else is going to set until I get that water. Jesus needed to get things done expeditiously. Remember, he said, I must work the work of him who sent me while it's day, for nighttime cometh, when no man can work it. He was on a mission. He had to do things expeditiously. So we thirst. We as Christians, do we thirst for the healing of this land? Do we thirst for our young people who are going to be our future leaders and defenders? Do we have a thirst for them? Or are we just hungry? Because, see, you can be hungry for a long time. You can go days without eating, weeks without eating. But how long can you go thirsty? You can't go too long. Blessed are the merciful, they will show mercy. Jesus revealed God as an absolute mercy. God enters into our misery by becoming man in the person of Christ. Remember we said that sometimes you hear people tell you, you don't understand my pain. I used to hear mothers say that Jesus knows. Because Jesus knows what it is to be homeless. Remember where he was born at? And if you look at his in the book, you look in the annals of Jesus' life, do you ever hear him talk about a mansion? Do you ever talk about him driving a BMW? You ever hear him talking about wearing a Joseph Abu suit? Nothing. So he knows what it is to be homeless. He knows what it is to be betrayed. He knows what it is to be set up. He knows what it is to be mocked and scorned. He knows what it is to be roughed up, beat up. He knows what it is to be murdered. So when you hear somebody tell you, Jesus understands, he does. He's been there and done that, but he's overcome that. And because of that, you can too. I think I said something. Jesus revealed the absolute mercy. His mercy will become merciful. To follow him is to be a conduit of his mercy. We are to be that conduit. Blessed are the pure in heart, they shall see God. Pure is that which is unmixed. You know, pure water, pure milk, pure apple juice. It's not mixed. It's in its purest state. To be pure in heart is to have an undivided love for God, a heart unmixed with any other competing loves. Remember, even in the Old Testament, the Ten Commandments, it says, thou shalt have no other gods before me. They have a love for things when your love is mixed up. They have a love for worship. There are people that actually love worship but don't love the reason why we worship. There are people that love God's creation but don't have a love for the Creator. It's a beautiful day today. And I always tell my son, this is God's divine handiwork. Now, you'll meet somebody someday that you may say that to for day. Yes, it is. Isn't God great? What's God have to do with this sunny day? Don't give credit to the Creator. And if by chance they do love God, that love is mixed up with love from some other things. Blessed are the peacemakers, they shall be called the children of God. A peacemaker is one who strives to bring together, to harmonize a people. He or she is one who is willing to make peace, to work at it, even fight for it. A true peacemaker is willing to take up arms and fight and even die for the cause. We saw that in our world wars. So a Christian is not a pacifist. We're activists. Even Jesus moved into the temples and was cracking the whip on the money exchangers. Did you know that the gossipers are not peacemakers? You know, people calling you and want to share things. Well, I'm just calling you to keep the peace. No, you're not. You're moving gossip, scandal, and division. Controllers are not peacemakers, for the controllers to gather into a unity, but one that is under the control and that he or she can manage it. True peacemakers is not an organizer, but an instrument in the hands of Christ, who orders and brings together in ways that are beyond our comprehension at that moment. But we see God's divine providence as time goes on. I'm finished. Blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of what is right, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The final beatitude implies that there is a real difference between joy and pleasure. There is no joy in being persecuted, but you find a secret joy in the very recesses of your soul, for you have become aware that you're receiving the gift of being drawn into the very heart of Christ. This silence is more joyful than all the earth's noise can ever offer to you. It's almost like MasterCard. It's priceless. It's almost like a Lay's potato chip. You can't just have one piece of God's silence. So when we are persecuted of Jesus, it takes us out of the noise of this world and into the profound rest found only in him. This attitude clearly implies that Christ is no more being human, and only he can impart blessedness to those who suffer on account of him and belonging to him. He is fully God and fully man, and as God, he chose to join a human nature to be subject to human suffering in the very joy of his supernatural life. With that truth, we rest in him. For everything that means heart, in his heart and man's heart, is looking for but cannot find outside of Christ. You can't find it outside of him. And what does this have to do with Ohio Guidestone, which is your connectional ministry? Well, you know, some of you are historians, the Civil War was in 1861. In 1864, the Spirit of the Lord moved across the hearts of the landscape of people, Methodist people, who said enough is enough. Enough, we have to do something. They were compelled to do something because children became orphans due to the collateral damage of the Civil War. Homes were decimated. You know, you had brothers killing brothers. You had cousins killing cousins because one was on the north and one was on the south. That war had the most American casualties to count because either way it went, when a life was taken, it was American life. We also had a tuberculosis outbreak over a 5-region state. And so the German Methodist Asylum was formed, a safe haven for children. People were compelled. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Now, when we truly love others, the happiness is our own, for we have begun to love them as another self, yet find them in their pain and suffering and struggling to be happy. And since we love them as oneself, their suffering too becomes our own. We mourn for them, for it's impossible to remain indifferent to the suffering of others after we have discovered and entered into the heart of God. What fills us with sorrow is the sins of human beings, the cold indifference toward others, God and the neighbor. But fret not, it is a blessed sorrow, a sorrow that is not incompatible with joy, but exists with it. For it is the joy of having been invited into Christ's sorrow, which is the joy that is filled. Ohio Guidestone, along with our other connectional ministries, was founded because people were moved, compelled to do something. Blessed are those who mourn. We have an understanding for those who have less than we have, and we are compelled to do something. So 150 years and counting now, this connectional ministry has been serving the lost, the left, and the alone, the least of these. We've beyond Berea, Ohio. That's why the name has changed. It reflects us being in Columbus. It reflects us being in New Philadelphia. It reflects us being in Lorain and Elyria and out in Painesville and moving out to Ashtabula. We didn't do that because we wanted to be a corporate juggernaut. We did it because we were asked to come and try to be and help to a healing land. We try to provide solutions to children, families, and services. And we try to do that and strive to do that under some 3 principles that we all live by. Do no harm, do good, and stay in love with God. We do it on those principles. And we've been doing it for 150 years. We address the whole man and woman, from education, because you didn't know it, but you have a charter school in the poorest areas of Cleveland, We handle mental health struggles. We also do workforce empowerment, helping young people get their GEDs and putting them in the gainfully work. They can be contributors to the society and feel good about themselves. And also we help families be better parents. Not telling them they're bad parents, but we want to show them a more excellent way. This and so many other things that we're doing in ministry, that's because 150 years ago, people were compelled to do something. And the need is still there. And so our charge is still there to go out and address those needs. Your support and your prayers has changed a lot of lives. Last year, we were able to help over 20,000 individuals and families. I've been with this ministry for over 16 years. 13 years I served in the group home ministry. You didn't know me, but during those 13 years, we saw over 50 young men come across the doorstep of the Marston Farm group home. And out of those 50, we saw 7 go off to college, and 3 have graduated, and the other 4 are still working toward trying to finish things up. 1 is about to get married this September. Every time we had a graduation, my wife and I would do a high five, and we asked a couple of our young men, how does it feel to graduate? They said, graduate? I didn't even think I would be alive. You know, it's a hard thing when your mother looks at you and tells you that she wished you were never born. It's a hard thing when a mother looks at you and says, I wish I would have put you deeper in the dumpster where they couldn't have found you. It's a hard thing when a young man is looking for a father to share with him what it is to be a man. And his father tells him, I don't have time for you. You're a result of a fun time and not a desire to be a dad. So we have that opportunity to come and share. We have that opportunity to show God's love, show God's grace in a human touch. That's what your connectional ministry has been doing. So what does the Beatitudes have to do with it? It has everything to do with it. Blessed are those who are compelled to step up and say enough is enough. Grace unto you.